April 20th, 1999, two students rampaged through Columbine High School, killing a dozen and wounding over 20 others. Media continually referenced the popular video game at the time, Doom, that they claimed the killers used for training. In 2007, Jack Thompson, a Florida attorney, within hours of the shootings at Virginia Tech, quickly pointed to a popular video game, Counter-Strike, that he claimed the killer also used for training. As parents and grandparents, responsibility lies in monitoring the gaming media and other media that our children are exposed to. Undeniably, some video games are violent. The possibility exists that these young minds can be molded by this. As parents, we need to help them understand, rationalize, and then control this media so that we can avoid this. Now, as a competitive gamer and a gaming media community manager for the popular video game Battlefield, I understand how this violence is in these video games. I can also understand how it can affect our youth if they are continually exposed to it. I understand the need for a rating system for these video games to ensure that these video games are proven to be violent and that parents can use these when purchasing them for their youth. The problem lies in that the parents, despite these rating systems being in place, deny them and avoid them and buy these games for their youth regardless. Now, my purpose tonight is to show you that these video games aren't necessarily violent if they're used properly. They can be used to promote positive growth, mental growth with our youth. Now, first I'd like to talk about how media claims the video game's role in violence was never justified. First, I'd like to talk about a couple quotes from you. This is a report, Brains on Video Games, was written in 2011. These doctors wrote, and I quote, "Sensationalist headlines claiming that video games damage the brain or boost brain power do not do justice to the complexities and limitations of the studies involved and create a confusing overall picture about the effects of gaming on the brain." And then they also said this, "Although popular media has a strong tendency to produce breathless headlines about the effects or lack of effects of video games, it is worth noting that the term video games is far from a single construct and thus has almost no scientific predictive power. No one can more say what the effects of video games are than one can say what the effects of food are." With that being said, the study also goes into the fact that they stated that prior to 2010, there was really no studies that studied video games to prove that they had any effect on our youth. Now that's now changed as of 2010. There are studies and experiments that show that video games do have the tendency to desensitize our youth to violence. Now, my second point I'd like to talk about is how we use the rating system and how the rating system was created so that we can use it as a tool when we're purchasing video games for our youth. And my second point is that the ratings exist for a reason and we need to use it. I'd like to say this. This is another report. This is your Brain on Video Games, written in 2011. And this study shows that quantitative data that suggests violent media exposure can lead to desensitization. Okay. Now, the Electronic Safety Ratings Board, this was established in 1994. Okay, this was designed to assign ratings to video games based on the content and what they were designed for. So they have basically three categories that they aim for. They have content descriptors, they have the rating categories, and then they have interactive elements. The rating categories go from E for everyone all the way to adults. Okay. Most of the video games that I am targeting tonight, and I'm specifically targeting, are the mature rating video games that are designed for 16-year-olds. Those would be games like Battlefield, Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, Global Offensive. Those are current games that are being published and are very popular today. The reason I say that, I just remember a couple weeks ago seeing a picture of a popular gaming event that just happened in Germany. The gaming event is called DreamHack, and basically it is designed to bring in popular esports teams that compete playing video games. Well, for the first time, there was a team there where the oldest player was 10 years old, competing, playing Call of Duty Advanced Warfighter, a game that was designed to target 18 to 34-year-old males and females. So you can imagine, with the violent content in Call of Duty, my shock when I saw the picture of the 10-year-olds playing the video game with their mothers standing behind them taking pictures of them. It absolutely shocked me, because I know the kind of content that is in this game as I own it myself. The ESRB specifically states that they list what they call these content descriptors, and they could be based on sexual content, levels of violence, the profanity in these games. All three of those are in the mature plus category. Andy Sekaris, a regional manager for a popular video game retailer, personally told me what they do to try to minimize parents buying their video games for these youth. The first thing that they do, if somebody brings a mature plus video game to their counter, if they look like they're under the age of 25, they immediately ask for an ID. They're not allowed to purchase the game unless they can prove they're over the age of 16. Secondly, if a parent approaches the counter with a video game with a youth present, every associate is required to show them the ESRB rating, and then they are required to go through those content descriptors that I talked about and explain what each of them does and how it is in that video game, so that they understand what they're doing in an attempt to keep them from having their youth exposed to this video game. But the problem is that despite this, parents continue to buy their video games for these kids, and they are exposed to violent video games, sexual content, profanity, that has been proven to desensitize them to violence, which can lead to violent behavior, within our society. Now, my third point, and this will be my last point, when done properly, games can help to mentally grow our youth. Now, the study, The Multiple Dimensions of Video Game Effects, was published in 2011, discussed how video games can be used positively. They had several studies, and this is what they said. We have several studies now demonstrated that experience with video games can improve certain types of visual attention skills. They also said the use of video game devices such as mouse and keyboard game controllers and so on can increase fine motor skills, gross motor skills, or even balance skills. These devices can also aid in physical therapy. I have proof of that myself. I actually used a Wii to train when I had surgery on my wrist, and for physical therapy I played Wii tennis to help regain flexibility back in my wrist. So these games can be used positively, and it has been proven that it will increase motor skills in our youth. Now, I'd like to conclude with this. Media tends to take a tragedy and then tend to try to find the easy answer for the blame, instead of looking at what the real answers are, the real causes, the root causes. Video games were used as the blame for these killings, very heinous killings in 2007 and in 1999, when the real problem wasn't video games. There was a plethora of other issues that came through the investigation, that they found that these kids were mentally unstable, many had been bullied, parents had basically denied them and not shown them attention that they needed. Tons of things other than video games that caused them to be mentally unstable. We need to make sure that these ratings that the ESRB puts out are used. And it's our responsibility as parents and grandparents to do that. So it's up to us to make sure that the media that our children watch and that they play is specific for their age, and that it helps to promote positive change in their lives. Lastly, God directs us to teach our children His ways, teaching us how God hates murder and violence to one another. Instead, we need to show them the love of God to others so that we can fulfill the duty as parents. While not considered a main avenue for sharing the gospel. There are popular Christian gaming groups that do Bible studies online, they share the gospel online, and they promote Jesus Christ to thousands daily. This is one way that our children could turn something perceived as negative into something as positive. That's it. And I went for 10 minutes. And I'm turning it in.